I'd like to call the September 13th Finance meeting to order. Mr. Valentine, would you please lead us in prayer following the pledge?
Bow your head, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for guardian angels, Lord, in this world. We appreciate the fact that they watch over us, Lord. We ask you to bless us with our health, with our family, Lord God. We ask to bless our men and women in uniform, protecting our country, Father. And, of course, the men and women here on our soil, giving us comfort every day, Lord. We ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is on. Let the record reflect Councilman Savoy, Councilman Dempsey-Lambert, and Councilman Thompson are out. 3 chairs additions. I don't believe we have any. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak, please sign a speaker card with Ms. Patterson, and we'll let you speak. Have 3 minutes at that particular agenda item. 5, Lamar Dixon report. Mr. Crawford.
Good evening, Council. You should have our report before you. If you'll turn that cover page. First page of this report is a comparative statement of revenues, expenses, changes in funds, and net assets with Lamar Dixon, beginning back from 2005 through inception, end of July 31st of this year. There's one number that I'd like to bring to your attention at this time on this page. Down about halfway down, you'll see the operating loss over there on the inception column. That is the number that we believe we have spent at this time, $1,354,533,000. This kind of report sums up where we've been and where we're at this time in the month of July. If you go to page 2, this is more focused on the month of July. This is our typical report. At the midpoint of the page, as you see, we were budgeted to have a $21,000 net loss. We actually had a $58,000 loss for a variance of $37,676. The bottom half of that page begins just some notes and details about what happened in July. The story basically is we had budgeted to have a 4th of July festival and another horse show in that month. We did not find promoters to produce those shows, so they simply did not occur. Page 3 also is just more information that will back up the first half of page 2. Going on to page 4, this is the financial highlights for the 7 months ending in July 31st. Again, the bottom line, we were budgeted to have a $50,000 net income loss. We actually had a $67,000 loss for a $16,000 variance at this point of the year. Page 5 is a combined income statement. The first half of that page, or actually the first 3 quarters of that page, is our information. The first 3 columns are the month of July. The 3 columns to the right, actually the 4 columns to the right, detail the year to date and our last year's year-to-date actuals to give you something to compare last year's versus this year. The bottom quarter of that page adds the parish's expenses into it as well. That will give you kind of a total idea of where we are. Page 6 is also a combined income statement with our annual budget. First column is year-to-date actuals, our budget next to that, and then the variances on the 3rd column. Also with the 4th column is our last year's year-to-date actuals. Page 7 is our balance sheet. And the final page is our accounts receivable. We're working to get those cleaned up. Probably be in the next month or so we look to collect most of that. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments, concerns from Mr. Crawford? Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Number 6, Finance Department reports. Ms. Gwen LeBlanc, CFO Treasurer. We have A, sales and use tax report.
Good evening, members of the council, Parish President Hughes. You have before you your monthly charts for the sales tax collections. You can see the East Ascension drainage tax is year-to-date is up 2.14%, as is our sales and use tax district number 1 in the middle. It's up 9.50%, and then our half-cent sales tax district is up 10.02%. Budget comparisons, you can see that they're all three up. And of course, as we said in the recent months, the reason East Ascension Drainage is not on track with the other two sales tax districts is because of a post-Katrina contractor that has since moved out of the parish and completed his work. Okay, so if we'll look at the charts, I'll put one up here. You can look at this is just a depiction of and it's not scientific, it's just a good feel for where are our sales taxes being collected in a parish, is to give all of us an idea of what sector is yielding the most proceeds from collections and for their sales, which transmits to our collections. And you can see that the largest piece of the pie, the light blue, is the petrochemical industry and their suppliers, and they represent, and this is a year-to-date, and it's only our 1% sales tax district. And year-to-date, January through August of this year, they represent 44% of our collections. And then retail, the purple, represents 31% of our collections. And then motor vehicle, which is collected by the Department of Revenue and remitted to each parish in the state, they represent 15% of our collections year to date, and then business to business represents 10%. And then on the next chart, if you turn to your third page, this is a comparison of those same year to dates, 2006 year to date compared to 2007 year to date. And once again, you can see 06 is the purple and the red is the 07 figures. And with the same categories, consumer retail year-to-date is up 4.8%, 07 over 06. Motor vehicles is down 2.2%, and business-to-business is up 22.3%, and the petrochemical industry and their suppliers, that sector is up 14.9%, almost 15% year-to-date. And then the last chart that we present to you is a historical depiction of all three of our sales tax districts. East Ascension Drainage, their half-cent sales tax, it's a 97 through 2007 year-to-date. And as you can see, you know, we're ahead of schedule compared to the highest year's collection, which is 2006. And as you just saw on the first page, those two, that one's up 2.9%, but the other two districts are up 10, a little close to 10, or a little bit over 10%. So we hope we can maintain that percentage of growth throughout the rest of the year. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions, comments? Thank you, Ms. LeBon.
Okay, thank you.
Number 7, Contract Firefighters, Fire District Number 1, Chairman, Mr. Benny Johnson. Thank you.
Council members, Parish President, what we've handed you is a package of a proposal that the fire district, along with the fire chiefs of District 1, have worked to put together with the things we don't have to explain, but reiterate. The growth of the parish has put a strain on the fire service within District 1. And within property insurance, one of the things that we can do to help ourselves with the rating, which in turn will hopefully happen in the next few years, with paid firefighters, which brings helps you get a lower insurance rating. We put together this package to try to take some of the existing funds that we have within the district and hire some part-time paid firefighters. What you'll find on one of the pages in there explains what we're doing. We're going to hire enough people to work one person at each of the 6 main stations for 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. On a part-time basis, they're not allowed to work any more than 27 hours in any one given week. They're going to start out at an $8 per hour wage plus FICA. There will be the opportunity for them to make more than that depending on the training and certification levels that they have. We have some stuff built in to give a boost to that to attract more certified or higher certification firefighters into the area. And with that, they will do different things through it today as far as like hydrant inspections, pre-plans on commercial occupancies, and also as well as entering EMS and fire reports into our reporting system.
Thank you.
One of the other things you have in your package is a copy of the policy and procedure manual along with the job description of what contract firefighters will be doing. And then the last item that you have in there is a copy of our budget page where we've increased, if we're given permission to do this, or we want to increase our budget for this year to $105,000, and next year a little over $200,000 will be allocated towards the salaries to cover all the expenses of that. And be glad to try to answer any questions you may have regarding that.
Questions, concerns, Mr. Johnson? Mr. Shakespeare.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Benny, the part-time fighters that you're going to provide by the district, will that be separate from if a fire department itself provides any full-time? Is that going to be separate from that?
Yes, right now Sorrento, Galvez, and Sanamo are providing for some part-time people out of their money that they raise through public or insurance rebate money. And what they're planning, from my understanding right now, the talk is that what they will do is run 24-hour coverage Monday through Friday. The guys that they currently have working through the day, they will in turn ask those folks or move them to work in coverage overnight.
Okay.
So it'll basically just extend the coverage that they already have.
That's what we were concerned about. We didn't want it to.
Yeah, it's not going to back off of what they're currently doing. They contemplated putting them on during the days where they have 2 people at those stations. And I haven't talked to any of those chiefs lately, but the last that I had heard from them was that they were looking at rolling them overnight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? I have something, Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
How will this affect the capital outlay plan for the district?
As of right now, there aren't any projects that we've dedicated this money to. I mean, we have projects that will probably be extended out, but the board as well as the fire chiefs in the area feel that this is an important project that we need to go ahead and push forward and implement it as soon as we can. With the strain of the added people in the district has put more responses on the fire departments as well as extended response times due to heavier traffic burdens and different things like that. All that weighs negatively on our property insurance rating, and this is one way of combating that by having someone at the station that can respond immediately to a call, as well as not waiting on the volunteers to get to the station and roll the trucks and stuff like that. So it will be a positive. There are some things that may be delayed short term, but not extensively.
Mr. Hillsback.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When is your next rating period, Benny?
We're actually in one right at this time. The packages have been sent in, and we're due in November for property insurance to come out and do a field survey of the district.
So this probably won't affect this rating period?
No, sir. We'll not do anything to benefit that.
It'll impact the next one, though?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Benny, from us, you need authority, or are you just letting us know what you're doing?
We're looking for authority, basically.
I offer that motion,
as
Mr.
well
Chairman.
as letting you know what we're doing.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Hillsback. Any other comments, concerns? Any opposition to the motion? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Number 8, resolution to propose a 2 meal tax, 1 meal for the purchase and capital improvements of Lamar Dixon, and 1 meal for the operation and maintenance of Lamar Dixon. Parish President Ronnie Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You should have in your packets a copy of these resolutions that's been prepared by our finance and bond people. And first thing we're going to do is just talk a little bit about from history. Amanda, where are you? You have those handouts that you were showing me. There's been a lot of things in the paper. Sometimes it's accurate, and I think sometimes people just misunderstand the finances because it's not always easy to understand. And so I think this will help you. I call this my one-page Cajun, I guess a Cajun income statement, if you would. What this does, a while back, some citizens have come and made a presentation about what we've been spending at Lamar Dixon, and if you look at just some of this, and even the study that LSU did on behalf of the Ascension Economic Development Corporation, they have $300,000 or $400,000 of numbers that we can't find in the parish records, so we're in the process of trying to call them. But this handout will show you clearly what we have spent in Ascension Parish tax dollars since we leased the facility, and I think the actual date was June 23rd of 2005. So for 25 months, if you go down to total expenditures, it would be the third line from the bottom, you'll see a figure of $1,649,700.87. We did not spend that. We've appropriated that. And you go to the next line, you'll see that $332,000 plus a little change of that $1.6 million is still there in SMG's account. So we have actually spent in 25 months $1.3 million operating Lamar Dixon when you look at the revenue that came in and what we have spent to supplement those operations. And so there's been a lot of confusion. I'm not sure if it's been intentional, if it's been politics or what. This is actual numbers that finance has been going through for several weeks now. And I said, what is the bottom line? What investment have we made of the taxpayers' money into Lamar Dixon since we signed the lease purchase agreement? And so we have spent $1,316,784.87. And hopefully that will be clear to you. When you go through this 6 or 7 page report, it can get a little confusing on what we have spent, revenues, operating costs, expenditures. And LSU had picked up a number like $2.1 million in operating expenses, and we still have not been able to find that. But when you put in the revenue, and if you go back to the report that Mr. Crawford and Richard made a while ago, if you go to the first page of that report, a comparative statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund net excess, okay, you'll see operating loss of $1,354,533, which is fairly close to that $1.3 million finance department is showing that we've actually spent there. But if you go above that, you see total operating expenses of $4.1 million. And some people think, well, that's what the parish has spent. That is not the case at all. When you put the revenue in, okay, which was $2.7 million, and you subtract that from the total operating expenses, then you get the number that the parish has actually spent in taxpayers' dollars. Any questions about that from any member of the council? So if you're asked, we've only spent about $600,000 a year of the taxpayers' money on operating the Lamar Dixon facility. And it's about $52,000, $53,000 a month for the 25 months that we have been in the lease purchase agreement, and the 7 days in the month of June when we signed the lease on June 23rd. Now, if you go back to, we had 2 special meetings in May of 2005. And I read some things in the paper this week that are not completely accurate. So I went back and we looked at all the minutes and the videos of those meetings. May the 2nd, 2005, May the 12th, 2005, May the 5th of 2005, first meeting in June of 2005, and this is what we talked about. And you may recall that some of you mentioned in the paper this week, well, Ronnie was trying to make himself look good by asking for a tax on the ballot now, and that couldn't be farther from the case at all. I'll just leave this alone, go right into the sunset, as one of you told me to do. But if you go back to the meeting, we first started talking about Lamar Dixon. I said that, in my opinion, we probably needed a couple of years of operations to determine if this was the right thing to do for our parish or not. And that's all in the minutes, it's all in the videos. Second point that I made was that we would need to try to get as much help as we can from the state and federal government. Now, that argument is not materialized to the degree that it should have, especially in light of what we did with just a month and a half later with Hurricane Katrina and Rita, where we took that facility and literally saved the lives of thousands of people and livestock at that facility. And Senator Landrieu had made a commitment to appropriate, and I think Martin was in that meeting, maybe some others, $10 million to buy the facility and climate control the main arena. Thus far, we've only had appropriated by the federal government $500,000, $250,000, which we do not have a dollar of it yet, although it's been appropriated by Congress. Now, we just finished the environmental impact analysis, and the craziness of our bureaucracy and our government, I guess 200-something years after 1776, this money is coming to us through housing and urban development. They got their own environmental section, even though we got EPA and everything else. HUD has their own environmental section, and even though all of these buildings have been built out and the impact on the environment has basically been done, HUD still required an environmental assessment. Okay, as part of the appraisal on that property. So Shaw just finished doing that a few weeks ago, and that cost us, I think, $8,000 or $9,000 for that environmental assessment. So we think we have done everything in the past 2 years now to appraise the property, hire a professional management firm, which we emphasized 2 years ago, which the foundation asked us to do and require. And we have spent about $600,000 a year of the taxpayers' money in that process. And I feel now it's time to move forward on that, and that our citizens, I gave you a copy of a recent survey that I have done, and some of you said, well, that may be skewed because I paid for it. I've seen 4 surveys on Lamar Dixon, only one of which I've personally done. And our citizens have been 65 to 67 to 70% in favor of this. Okay? And so, another reason I vetoed the tax back on May the 5th of 2005, because we were going to, you might remember me using the term rush to taxation without a plan for the facility, and not knowing if we could afford this facility. And another thing that I said at that time is I had a personal problem with special elections, when part of that strategy being just to have a low voter turnout so we can guarantee success. And that election would have been in July of 2005. And historically, if you go back and look at election turnout in Ascension Parish for July special elections, they're 15, 17%. On good elections, sometimes they're 7 to 10%. And I thought this issue was so critically important that we needed to have it when we were ready and knew what we needed and how much we needed. We needed to have that election at a time when we'd have a large percentage of our voters going to the poll more than likely. And obviously on November 17th, the general election for the year, we've been 2 years now in operations. It's time to do that, in my opinion. And I know politicians put things on special elections when they want to get it passed, because you get the people out in favor of it, and they'll go get 10% turnout, and they'll go get 6% to vote for it. I do not think that's the American way. I think that is anti-Republican. some of you said I'm a liberal, claim to be a conservative. I think Mr. Valentine said that this week, if the quote was correct.
No names, Parish President.
No names. I was just saying it was in the paper. I read it, and you know Mr. Macmillan wouldn't put anything in there that wasn't said. And so the point is this. This issue is not being a liberal or conservative. It's not being a Democrat or a Republican. Just what's the right thing to do for the parish, and can we afford to do it? And is this the time now to ask the voters if they're willing to pay for it to do it? And I think it is. And so those of you who had argued for a tax back then that I vetoed, well, we'll see if you want to put your money where your mouth is now and let the citizens vote on this. And if you got any questions on the finances, if you doubt that we only spent $1.3 million, we spent $2 million or $3 million, I hope you'll go sit down with Ms. LeBlanc, Ms. Amanda, any of them, and go through all the records. We've combed through them now for months trying to make sure we knew what we did spend there, because sometimes those reports were a little confusing to understand what has actually been spent by the taxpayers. So I propose that, and some of you told me that you would support this if we let the voters vote on it, and we have a dedicated revenue stream to pay for it. So what we have done, and I got with the assessor, the value of a meal in our parish has increased from the census year of 2000, about $300,000 a year, to the anticipated value next year is about $700,000 of tax revenue that comes in with one meal. And so as we looked at this, and then the projections going forward with what's coming on the tax rolls, if this governing authority continues to roll that forward when I'm no longer here, it is anticipated in 3 to 4 years that a meal may actually be valued at $1 million a year in Ascension Parish. When you start adding the property values like the Lowe's and some of these buildings and the cost to construct them now, and Ms. Michelle has said that we have really increased significantly in the last 12 months the value of a meal. From last year to this year, it's about we're going from about $620,000 one value of a meal for property tax to right at $700,000 for 2008. And so we've had a significant increase because of all the construction and the increase in property values. So we come to you with a proposal where we are very confident that a one meal property tax, which will generate $700,000 next year, and probably by the year 2010 as much as $1 million, that one meal would be dedicated for the operation and maintenance of the facility so that we can properly maintain it, and that another meal would be, if the citizens choose to do this, would be dedicated for purchasing and for capital improvements. The one meal for operations and maintenance would not be bonded, because as long as we own the facility, obviously we have an expense to operate it and maintain it. The one meal to buy it would be bonded for 20 years. Okay? And when SJB finishes with their community meetings and the business plan, and if it's decided that the citizens want a performing arts theater there, or they want cabins around the lake for weekend camping and canoeing, or whatever that plan comes back as, well, then that would be attached to our active sale. So those would become the priorities. This body going forward on the 117 acres of undivided land. Now, we spent a lot of hours in the last few weeks with the Lamar Dixon Foundation, the attorneys, trying to work out the active sale. So the thing that we wouldn't want to have happen is the citizens vote for something and then we don't have a final document. And the reason this come up quickly is because we have some time restraints to put things on the ballot for November 17th. Secretary of State, you don't have to go to them until October the 2nd. However, State Bond Commission, which is also the state taxing authority, and I've talked to Mr. Kennedy personally in the last few days. He called me Monday on this. They also have to approve tax propositions, even though we have our own home rule charter. and they have to approve it and get it to the Secretary of State. It doesn't go directly from us. It goes through the Bond Commission. And they have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday, September the 20th, and they have agreed for us to put this on their agenda. And so if this body votes to allow our citizens to vote on this you guys decide next Thursday night to do this and move it forward, well, then the Bond Commission would take that under advisement. And so that's kind of a review or history of what's happened with this. So it has nothing to do about somebody trying to look good. It's to do based on experience of what we've done for 2 years. Do we think is we can afford this in our parish based on the other needs? And if you and so you'll understand, so you'll have no misunderstandings on what it would cost the average homeowner. $100,000 home, and I know we don't have a lot of those left in our parish, but we still have a significant number, would cost $5 a year for 2 meals of this property tax, the homestead exemption. A $200,000 home would cost $25 a year for these 2 meals, and a $300,000 home would cost $45 a year for these 2 meals. And we think this will be a path forward that would pay for this facility and keep it maintained in a state that we'd all be proud of and grateful for, and it would provide the benefits to our citizens as well as other events. And this has nothing to do with the economic impact indirectly. And let me just speak to that for a minute so you can ask questions if you want. You can't just look at economic impact based on tax dollars coming to parish government or the city government or the state government or the school board. Obviously, the facility is located in the parish, and as Cabela's opens within the next 3 weeks, as the hotels are built, there's 3 or 4 proposed now. Some of those will be in the parish, some of those will be in the city. Obviously, the city derives more direct tax benefit than the parish. Obviously, the state of Louisiana derives the most. They derive 4 cents. School board derives 2. City derives 2. Our East Ascension Consolidated Gravity Drainage District derives a ½ cent, even in the city limits of Gonzales. But when you look, and what I've done, I've been meeting with the businesses within that corridor of the city who directly benefit financially with the events at Lamar-Dixon. For example, the Holiday Inn with over 150 employees. Now, the argument would be valid to say that just the city benefits if all 150 of those employees lived in the city and only spent their money in the city limits of Gonzales. Now, obviously, the city of Gonzales is in our parish. Most of the employees at the Holiday Inn do not live in the city of Gonzales. So I submit to you, if you think about economics and broaden your thinking about it a little bit on what economic development truly is, if I live in Sanama and I work at the Holiday Inn, chances are I'm going to spend some of my money at the businesses in the Sanama area where I live. When I looked at the payroll at businesses such as Chili's, Cracker Barrel, all the hotels, Speedy's Golf Sales, the Boot Store, Saks Western Store, businesses that said, yes, Ronnie, we see an impact on our businesses when events are held at Lamar-Dixon. And that's the ones I wanted to talk to. And for example, one of those businesses, only 9 employees, who has a huge impact with 4 or 5 type of events during the year. None of those employees live inside the city limits of Gonzales. None, including the owners. Their payroll is over $300,000 a year. Common sense, without having to have a PhD in economics, tells you that the chances are pretty good that a good bit of that $300,000 is spent where those people live, since we have more places to shop in the parish. They live in Prairieville, Hobart, Oak Grove. They're spending some of their payroll in that area. They may be spending at grocery stores along the airline or wherever. That money we do get direct sales tax from into the parish, because being at the point of sale in the unincorporated areas of the parish. And the more I got into this, And I don't want to divulge all the names and employees because it's confidential. I just wanted to say, give me the percentage of your employees live outside the city limits of Gonzales, and give me the percentage of your annual payroll for those. And it's in the millions of dollars for payroll. And so as you think about this, I ask you not to be so narrow-minded that you're just thinking of the city directly from a sales tax standpoint, that you truly think of economic development that's taking place because citizens who work there. And we have, with the Tanger Mall, the restaurants, the 6 or 7 hotels, and there's 4 more hotels being planned now, the Cabela's with 300-something employees when they open next month, most of those employees will not live in the city limits of Gonzales. So we're talking about millions of dollars of annual payroll that they will be spending in other areas of the parish that will benefit our fire districts, our road districts, our drainage districts, and our 1-cent undedicated tax, because they do spend their money now that we have shopping opportunities in the parish. Does that make sense to you? Try to explain it. And so I wanted to take the time to do that. And several of these businesses had no employees living in the city limits, nor did the owners live in the city limits. They lived in the unincorporated areas of our parish. And when asked how much of your money do you think you spend, if they lived out in Gold Place, Sanama, they shopped at the supermarkets there, the hardware stores there, yes, we do that. Which makes common sense. I think most of us do that if the convenience and the opportunity to shop there is there. And the Prairieville Walmart, a ton of the people shop there, which all of that money goes to the parish, the state, and the school system. So I wanted to cover that aspect because that's been, I think, in people's minds has created some misunderstandings when you talk about economic development and the benefits of Lamar Dixon. And the indirect benefit is what that is, the people spending their payroll there. And I think all of us can relate to that. I live in Burnside. My zip code is still Gonzales. Most of my money is spent outside in the unincorporated areas, be it shopping for groceries, cleaning services, or whatever it is. And because I think we're conscious of that, knowing that that money comes back to the parish to help us with the services we need to provide so badly for our citizens. So I ask that you approve this, you let the citizens vote on it. If you got any questions for me, I'll be here all night with you if you want to discuss this issue.
Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. President, I got one question. You know, we talked about the homeowners, you know. What about the chemical plants like BASF that's millions of dollars, Shell Chemical that's millions of dollars? What would this $2 million property tax cost them?
We don't have that number yet.
It would be big.
But a lot of them had 10-year tax exemptions.
But most of that's already done.
Yeah, but every new unit requalifies. And sometimes they change the name of sales so they get certified again.
BASF been there since, you know, the 60s, so I'm sure most of the tax exempts are finished. Shell's the same way.
They're good corporate citizens. They don't like the property taxes necessarily. But I think they see the value of the facility. And they can vote against it if they don't. Just like I can vote for it because I think it's good for our family. It's a great question, Doc. And we'll get that.
Finished, Mr. Lambert?
That's it.
Mr. McConnell.
Mr. Lambert asked my question. See, I wrote it on a tablet. Mr. Lambert asked my question because that's what...
he was cheating. You suspended, Lambert.
That's all right. I'll share my questions with anybody who cares to have them. That was a concern of mine as well, Mr. President, is... yes, many of our homes are no longer homestead exempt completely. A lot of people are now paying property taxes, but it is still business, particularly the petrochemical industry. And you just saw the tax charts that were presented a moment ago. Industry is paying a very large portion of the taxes, and they really are funding this parish, and they're making it possible for us to have the good blessings that we've had. And we do have a lot of businesses here, and I'm just concerned that a millage, a property tax, would be disproportionately hard on the businesses as opposed to the individuals. I would be more inclined to look at a millage tax for other infrastructure needs, such as highways. I noticed an article in the Advocate this week that talked about commuting patterns and how many people drive into this parish to work at our industries or at our different businesses. And so I would think it would probably be more fair, a property tax, a millage, some sort of a tax based to have those vehicles driving here, so that we could pay for the infrastructure that we need, the highways and the drainage or the sewer systems, whatever it is we're trying to improve this parish for. But a property tax, a millage, that has always been a thorn for me. It's always been very difficult for me to support a millage, just because of the disproportionate share that it would place on businesses. So I'm going to have a tough time with this. And I'm like Mr. Lambert. I'd like to know what it's going to cost BASF and Shell and Oxy and Williams and Rubicon and Air Liquide and all of the other melamine and the different plants.
DuPont.
Only about DuPont.
No, I don't care about DuPont. No, that's not true. That's not true. No. That's
we
not true.
we will try to get that for you, Mr. McCollum, before next Thursday. But the problem with it, because of 10-year exemptions and Barnes went out of business, they went bankrupt. Now it's Westlake. They started over the clock on 10-year. My brother's been there for years. And so just, a home is easy. A $100,000 house, we know what it costs. When we get into the chemical businesses, because of these tax exemptions and other tax incentives, but we will ask Ms. Michelle to give us, we are trying to get that as close as we can, but we don't want to give you something that's not accurate. And I don't know if we know exactly what that cost is. Now, they'll tell you some things when you ask them, just like when they, tell you the schools are costing them money with new residential developments. It's costing the schools money. But now, one thing I will tell you, and it came from the survey I did, was 412 households, and I didn't put the questions together. I hired a firm to go out and it was very expensive, and I paid for it. And 412 households, and many people that were surveyed told me, right, it took us 25, 27 minutes to answer it all. 76% of those people, and I gave you a copy of that last week, so they think we need to totally overhaul the tax structure in the parish so that residential developments not hurt us but help us. Now, the problem we got with that, because of the sacred cow of homestead exemption, that's something you can't, as a governing authority, even vote to say, if I want to lower mine and donate it to Lamar Dixon or for roads or sewer, you can't even give me that option. Now, in the cities, they don't have it, but in unincorporated areas of the parish. And so because of that rather high homestead exemption, whereas a state like Florida is $25,000 homestead exemption, ours is $75,000. It's hard to reach, because when you make a valid point, I agree. We only have 2.8 mills of parish taxes undedicated, and that's cut in half in the municipalities to 1.4. And I think the citizens began to recognize that when I think 65% said they would even vote to redirect drainage tax to wastewater. Now, obviously, the people who got the floods, homes flooded, they probably 20-something% said no. The 60-something other percent said, I got a sewer problem that I want to see taken care of.
Chris, let's stay on Lamar Dixon.
Well, I'm just sharing with you some data on the whole thing there, which goes to Martin's point, I think, Mr. Chairman, on what kind of tax you do. Now, regardless of what we do, you and I all know, we have enough Economics 101 that business is going to pass that tax, be it a sales tax or property tax or whatever you call it, a fee. They're going to pass it down to the person that buys the product at the bottom of the funnel. So whoever buys BASF or DuPont's products or Westlake's or whoever, as much as they can, they're going to pass the cost down to the consumer who's buying their finished products or their raw products. And that's just the way it is. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, the chemical industry was doing very poorly in our parish. It has done much better. Now, if you got a fair way of doing it, a sales tax is passed down to the consumer too. Businesses don't pay taxes, and people who buy those products really pay it, basically. So,
and let me say too, I mean, through these last 2-3 years, however long it's been, I think my support of Lamar Dixon has been patent. I think it has been very evident to everybody that I'm a strong supporter of Lamar Dixon. I realize the impact that this facility will bring to this parish. So I have pretty much supported everything that has come forth to do with making sure Lamar Dixon stays open, stays under parish control. I did not support the tax when it was proposed a couple of years ago. And my reason for not supporting the tax was not the tax, was the fact that there was no plan. And I cited the example of when the sheriff's office was proposing a tax. I believe it was a half-cent tax, sales tax. They were proposing that tax to the people, and they went around this parish. They went all over the parish. They had meetings at every opportunity, and they had a very specific plan. It was all written out precisely. We're proposing this much tax. We believe it's going to take in this amount of money, and from this amount of money, we're going to take amount A, and we're going to buy this many patrol cars. We're going to take amount B, and we're going to increase our base salary of our employees so that they will be at or above all surrounding parishes so that we can get the best employees. And then with amount C, we're going to do this, and with amount D, we're going to do that. And the people bought into that. They bought into that plan, and I don't have a plan here in front of me. All I have is a proposition that says we propose a tax, and then it says this tax is going to take in this much money. We're going to use this money to buy it, and we're going to use this money to. And it's not clear. And when I'm spending that kind of money, and I'm one of those people. I think I'm the only people here that I'm the only person who lives in town, so I'm not homestead exempt. I've been paying property taxes for 25 years on my house. We're not homestead exempt, my wife and I. So, and I'm glad to pay it. I'm glad to pay my property taxes when I know that I'm getting my money's worth. But until I see the plan, I'm going to again have a difficult time supporting this. I don't like property millages, except as the last resort. But I'd really like to see a plan in writing that shows what we're going to receive, where it's going to come from, where it's going to go to, how we're going to spend it, and I'd really like to see that. I'd like to see how much it's going to cost.
You'll have that before next Thursday night, Mr. McCollum.
You finished, Mr. McCollum?
Now I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Chairman. The problem with this, gentlemen and ladies, is we got this at 6 o'clock on Monday evening. We got an email saying that this was going to take place. Nothing has really changed with the MOU. The past president has just said that. We still hadn't ironed out anything with whether or not we can do anything with this facility if we buy it. We still have no plan. We're going to get it in a week. We talked about rush to taxation without a plan. Well, this is a classic example of rush to taxation without a plan. Cash value of this facility, it's a wonderful facility. Don't get me wrong, it is a beautiful facility. I don't want to see it close either. But for us to sit here around this table tonight and say we're going to put an issue on the November 17th ballot, and we hadn't even had discussion. The parish president didn't even call me to discuss this with me, that he was going to even attempt to do this. I essentially called the bond commission, talked to Mr. Kennedy and myself also. It was on the ad hoc committee meeting, and he took it off and put it on the regular agenda. And really, by Mr. John Kennedy's own rules and the bond commission rules, they shouldn't even be looking at this on Thursday. Essentially, they're breaking their own rules by doing that, and I'm not happy about that, because the way it's set up is so that people do have input, that the general public does have input, and this is a rush to taxation. The cash value of the property itself is only $10 million, or a little bit over $10 million by our own assessment that we had to do. He mentioned about $500,000. We hadn't spent a dime of it yet because we hadn't got it. We didn't do an environmental study, so we hadn't got anything. The state of Louisiana don't want to buy it. And Mr. Odom turned it down himself. There's some problems. I don't want to see it close, but I would like to see a new legislative body and a new leadership in this parish, which we'll have after the first year, decide its fate. So therefore, I'll make a motion to table this agenda item until after the first of the year.
I second it.
Motion to table by Mr. Valentine, second by Ms. Fontenot. To have a vote on it. Any objection? Motion carries. Number 9, resolution to propose a half-cent tax for road improvements. Parish President Ronnie Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on the 20th of February 2006, in the State of the Parish address, which most of you chose not to attend, I propose to you a plan for transportation. That was about 6 months after the impacts of Hurricane Katrina had been deeply felt in this parish. And I'd like to ask Mr. Turner, just our new Public Works Director, to come to the mic for a minute. Or you can just answer from there, Bob, with the mic. Our transportation study that had been completed a few weeks before Katrina hit by the Metropolitan Planning Organization with federal highway dollars was $500,000 by a firm. And they say we needed about $700 million over the next few years in Ascension Parish for roads. Mr. Turner shocked me a few weeks ago, and I'd like you just to tell the whole council, Mr. Turner, in your professional opinion, and you've been doing this over 40 years now, what does the state need to spend or invest in Ascension Parish on their state roads just to get us to where we need to be with what's happening in our parish with the growth and development?
Well, Mr. President, clearly I have not a detailed estimate of the cost. However, the 150 to 60 miles of state road in our parish, based on the cost of what is estimated for LA 42 at about $15 million a mile, it's in excess of $1.6 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Ms. LeBlanc, Finance Director, how much has our dedicated road tax been bringing into Ascension Parish for the last few years? And let me point out to you around the table, as well as our citizens, that the last 2 years have been the best financial years in the history of our parish. So Gwen, just what about what that tax has brought in, a half-cent road tax, with 2/3 of a half-cent that goes to roads?
Mr. Chairman.
Brings in between $5.5 to $6 million.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, would you have Ms. LeBlanc come to the mic?
Come to the mic, Ms. Gwen, if you would, please, ma'am. Did you say $5.5 to $6 million?
That's correct.
Okay, now, when I proposed this in February 20, 2006, in your next council meeting on March the 2nd, your chairman at that time, who was Mr. Savoy, assigned several things. You might remember that speech. Those of you who boycotted and didn't come won't, but you got it between then. And Mr. Savoy assigned to the Transportation Committee a list of road projects, and I talked about the half-cent sales tax for roads and the impact fee. He assigned to Strategic Planning Committee the fee for impact, transportation impact. He assigned to Mr. Valentine, he put Mr. Valentine at that time on the Lamar Dixon Committee, with the other ones was on there, to bring forth a determination as to what the parish's control and development options will be on the center. He sent to the Finance Committee suggestion that we rededicate 1/8 of our 1-cent sales tax for wastewater. You recall the name of that address was A Time for Choosing. Ascension Parish was at a serious crossroads. It had already been growing at a significant rate. It had been really impacted because of the effect of Katrina and Rita and the people that were moving it.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Let's stay on task on what we're talking about with our parish president, please.
We are, Mr. Valentine. I just want to share with you what we get to on this road
We don't need to share. Let's just talk about the road tax which you're bringing.
Well, I'm just discussing something, Mr. Valentine. And I'm going to do it to your face and not the paper. Okay? Now, we can sit here and put our heads in the sand and make like all these problems are going to go away. And some white horse from Washington and Baton Rouge is going to travel to this parish and dump a bunch of money. We can treat our citizens like they're stupid. And we can put things in the paper, well, we're going to get it from the state and federal government. Let me just share with you what I've learned for the past 44 months and many, many trips to Washington about road money. And all of you know this, but sometimes we've got to be reminded to make the tough decision. And it's not tough, not easy for a Republican to recommend a new tax. And again, this is not a Republican, a Democrat issue, or conservative, or liberal issue. This is an issue of who's going to take care of the roads that are in horrible condition. And let me just share with you a quick story this week. A young lady from England originally, been counted the last few years.
Parish President. Well, let's talk
About
about
roads.
the tax.
It's about roads.
No,
About
Parish
tax.
President. This is not about a half-cent sales tax. It's a story
When she
about
asked
girls
what you
from
think
Canada.
of Ascension Parish, you said you got no shoulders on your roads. It's a third world country. And I want you to think about that. Mr. Turner just told you, who I think you all respect and trust, told you that in his estimation we're going to need about $1.6 billion. The state should spend it. We could argue all night, Mr. Barker. Ideally, we shouldn't have to do it. The state should take their 20-cent gasoline tax and do it. Federal government should take their 18.3 cents gasoline tax and do it. Well, I want our citizens to understand they're not going to do it. Mr. Bradbury, who I think is a very honorable man, has told all of us in the last few weeks. In fact, he sent a memo out recently to engineering firms around the state that we're not doing capacity projects. We're just trying to maintain what we have, that we're $14 billion behind. Now, this is the State Department of Transportation and Development saying we're $14 billion behind on state roads. In addition, this year, our state had $3 billion, or approximately, of surplus for the last two budget years, pure surplus. And gentlemen and ladies, they only invested $9.6 million of that in Ascension Parish, the fastest growing parish in the state for the last 6 years, and number 78 in the nation for the last 6 years. In addition, if you'll talk honestly to some members of Congress, they will tell you that the Federal Highway Trust Fund, when this 5-year transportation bill runs out, will be about broke, because they've borrowed money from that just like they borrowed money from Social Security and used for other areas. So that 5-year bill went into effect in 2005. In 2010, that transportation bill, Safety Lou, will be expired. And when they're honest with you, if you sit down and talk to them one-on-one, they'll tell you that we do not have the money right now without increasing the federal gasoline tax to refund the Federal Highway Trust Fund. Now the state's telling us they don't. They're $14 billion in the hole on the state highway trust fund. Mr. Turner just told us and our citizens that somebody needs to spend $1.6 billion. And so when that half-cent sales tax was proposed in February, was sent to a committee, and to my knowledge, it's never been brought back to the floor of this governing authority for an up or down vote. If it is, please let me know when, because we cannot find it anywhere in the minutes. It was sent to a hole somewhere, and with the transportation issues in our parish, I think you all would agree, regardless if you respect the parish president or not, that it's gotten worse since February of 2006 and not better. And we have grown at a 27.21% annualized rate of growth since the year 2000. And essentially, no state roads have been widened other than a mile or two here of a third lane being there. And if you'll talk to the Fire District 1 and the other fire district, they'll tell you just from an emergency safety standpoint, be it ambulances, fire protection vehicles, or whatever they are, that we're developing a huge problem on state road. We have no shoulders. And so what this 1/2 cent tax will do, if you guys got the courage to let the citizens vote on it, it will bring in about $10 million a year on current estimates. Obviously, it won't solve a $1.6 billion problem, but what it will do, and since this body voted against the impact fee in June of 2006, it will let us leverage that money, so if they find some federal or state dollars somewhere in the next few years, and just for Highway 42, which desperately needs to be done, and I don't think we care if it's a state or parish road. When I saw that 88% of our citizens said, fix the state roads even if the parish does it, and it's going to cost us $50 million for 3.8 miles of road on 42. $50 million. And the state's only got $11 million right now in the budget to do that project, and they said it's going to take us 5 to 7 years to do it. We can't wait 5 to 7 years to fix a problem that's been on Highway 42 since 1990. And even though I live in Burnside, I do not mind paying a tax to help solve that problem out there. To me, it's absolutely incredible that problem has been there, especially when you consider that the two past chairmen of the House Transportation Committee and the state legislature lived in Ascension Parish. Okay? And so, if you don't want to let the people vote on this, fine. You don't care if people get killed. And it's always human error. Every accident's got some human error in it. But we got so little room for error on these state roads because we do not have shoulders. And so over the next, I propose this tax be for 10 years, so that whoever's in this office in 10 years can be held accountable on how they spent that money. That would generate probably about $110 million over 10 years. If somebody comes up with a few $100 million, that would give us a match that says, okay, we're 4-lane 42 now, then we're 4-lane 73, then we're 4-lane 30, we're 4-lane 44, whatever. I don't care what roads you do. Just do something where the problems are, so our citizens have a better transportation system. And so this half-cent sales tax will at least give us much-needed money and the fixed state roads that are desperately overdue. And the $5.5 million that the parish tax brings in currently, hopefully that'll be enough to maintain some of the parish roads and these new subdivisions as they start falling apart. And we already got some like Pelican Point in Kent's district, and he knows this, falling apart, 10 years old. And so, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, a year and a half it's been in committee and hadn't come back up for an up or down vote with this governing authority. And it's just time that we do it. I mean, we just need to do it. And if you don't want the citizens to vote on that either, table it too to next year. And the citizens just need to see what's going on. And I understand it takes guts to put a tax on the ballot in an election year. But I think it's the right thing to do in this parish, and I've spent I don't know how many hours and trips trying to find dollars for highways. And if there's any way I thought we could get any money of a significant amount to address these state road problems, I wouldn't be coming before you recommending we ask our citizens to vote for a sales tax dedicated for just those road projects and just for 10 years. And it's got to be renewed in 10 years if people want to do other road projects. So it's not like the drainage tax is out there for perpetuity. And we all know, and I helped waste some of it too the first couple of years. That tax was supposed to be dedicated and was supposed to sunset when those projects were done. And they weren't. The ballot, they didn't put the sunset clause in. It goes on forever, half-cent throughout East Ascension Parish. So we've got $120 million there. And I understand the citizens will get upset when they see that not being accounted for properly. That's why I'll only propose this tax, Mr. Chairman, where it's 10 years duration. The projects are named on the ballot by priority, and when those are finished, and we won't get all those done in 10 years, okay? But we'll get some of them done, which I don't think we will get done if you guys don't do something. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes, once again, it's another rush to taxation. I'm looking at a resolution in front of me here that really doesn't specifically say that. It doesn't say that we got a priority list on the roads. It just says a resolution for a half-cent sales tax. I think this board worked long and hard on this. I talked to Senator Amedee today. I talked to Senator Lambert a few minutes ago, and I talked to Representative Lambert and Representative Mertz Miley, and all three of them are not in favor of this. Mr. Lambert and Mr. Amedee informed me that the three-lane project from 621 to Highway 61 on 73 is going to be upgraded from a three-lane to a four-lane. He and Mr. Lambert, Senator Amedee and Mr. Lambert worked on that. So I think they are doing some capacity. So once again, I think this ought to be something that new leadership and a new council should deal with. So therefore, I move to table this resolution also.
I second it.
Motion to table by Mr. Valentine, second by Ms. Fontenot. Do we have any objection?
I got discussion.
It's not debatable.
Excuse me, there's no discussion when there's a motion for a table item. If the table
Well, I'd like to go on
item
the record
fails,
on the item. I'd like to
then
go
we
on the
can have
record.
discussion.
Parish, the charter says parish president can discuss any issue. Can't vote on it back in this.
Point of
Robert's
order,
Rules
Mr.
of
Chairman.
Order says you cannot. We have a vote at this moment.
Does not override our charter, Mr.
Yes, it
Chairman.
does.
No, it does not.
Here it does. Do we have any objection? No objection, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I'd just like to make one comment. I believe there's been a lot of broad painting here with the bus.
Number 10,
so to speak.
intergovernmental agreement with St. Charles Sheriff Office for the housing of inmates. Parish President Ronnie Hughes.
I just go back to number 9 quickly, Mr. Chairman. I think I have
Number
a right
10,
to
Parish
respond to
President.
Mr. Valentine's comment about
Point of
rusting
order, Mr.
taxation.
Chairman.
Yeah, I guess something going to the Transportation Committee in March the 2nd.
Point of order, Mr.
6th.
Chairman.
I guess that's
Parish
rusted
President.
taxation. Hadn't come
Point of
out of
order,
the
Mr. Chairman.
Transportation Committee yet, Mr. Valentine and Ms. Fontenot. So, I guess a year and a half you guys haven't had a chance to read it.
Do you have something on number 10,
Yeah, I
Parish
do.
President, or
I'm
do we
gonna
need to
finish
pass?
number 9.
No, we are finished number 9.
Yeah, you shut me up.
Come on, Parish President. Number
Okay.
10, please. We finished.
Now, no, you're going to talk about rusted taxation. It's been sitting in a committee for a year and a half. Bruh, give me a break. Our citizens deserve better than that.
Parish President, we
Now.
finished number 9. Number 10,
I'm finished with it now.
Don't be
Number-
mad at the rules. Let's just follow them.
Yes.
Number 10, please.
Follow your charter, please.
Mr. Chairman, may I please just make one comment for the
No,
record?
sir. We're on number 10,
Because
please. Parish President. Let's go.
I supported the impact fees. I just want the viewing public to understand I supported impact fees. I also
Point of order, Chairman.
was at the parish president's
Parish President.
debate.
Number
Thank
10,
you.
please.
Number 10.
Thank you.
This is a renewal, but it's a little increase. As you know, we house some of our parish prisoners over in St. Charles Parish because we do not have room in our parish jail. And so these are female prisoners. Obviously, it costs us a good bit more to house them there, but we have to pay the state rate based on the Department of Corrections instead of the parish rate, which is only $3.50 a day. So this is a renewal of that.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
And it's going to cost a few cents more from what they're telling me the state has increased its
Motion
rate.
by Councilman Ty Lambert, second by Mr. Valentine. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carried. Number 11, proposed agenda for regular council meeting of September 20th, 07. Please take a couple minutes to review.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lambert.
I see something right on it. Maybe Mr. Bob can explain some of the roads that we're going to take in. I don't think some of them went to transportation, if I'm not mistaken, right? Ms. Fontenot might can answer. On 14.
What number, Mr. Lambert?
14. Several I see in there. I'm on the transportation committee. I don't recall seeing them come to us. F
I
was
think if
one
you
of them.
recall, they were sent back to planning and zoning, which they took them up last night.
Okay.
And then that's recommendations from planning and zoning.
Okay, that's fine.
That's correct, yes.
That's fine. Thank you.
I
Thank
do
you
have
for clearing
an
that up.
You finished, Mr. Lambert?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Patterson.
Be sure to change your special utilities meeting. In August.
Yes. We had a special utilities meeting 15 minutes prior to this meeting. We passed a change order on the Hillaryville sewer, and it will be added to this agenda. Ms. Fontenot.
We want to add item F under the Transportation Committee meeting. We have a special meeting called for next Wednesday to deal with the URS contract, and we want to put the URS contract on the agenda. Under 8F.
Okay. Ms. Patterson, can you add that, please? Anything else?
Yes, I have a
Yes, ma'am.
legislative received a recommendation from the zoning union last evening, and they got a list of rezoning issues here. Shall I put that on the agenda? They have put it down there.
Is that for review only? If that's for review only, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Anything else? Mr. McConnell.
Oh, I got the seat. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Lambert. Meeting adjourned.